Ashes and arrivals. The transport shuddered as it broke through Kithura's atmosphere, and convict medic Dex pressed his face to the small porthole, watching the scarred landscape unfold below. 3 years of civil war had turned what was once a lush world into a patchwork of craters and burning settlements. Smoke columns rose like twisted prayers against the amber sky. "Welcome to paradise," muttered his bunkmate, checking his medical kit for the dozenth time. "Hope you brought extra trauma supplies." Dex shouldered his pack as the transport touched down with a bone-jarring thud. The moment the ramp lowered, the acrid smell of smoke and something else, something sweet and medicinal, filled his nostrils. The refugee camp sprawled before them like a maze of makeshift shelters and canvas tents. Thousands of displaced Kithurans huddled around cooking fires. "Medical teams, Sector 7. Captain Noor's voice cut through the chaos. "We've got incoming. Wounded from the border settlements." The field hospital was barely more than a reinforced tent, but Dex had worked in worse conditions. He was setting up triage stations when the explosion started distant at first, then closer, making the answer. Ground trembled beneath their feet. Wounded began streaming in. Kithurans with their distinctive silver-blue skin, torn and bloodied. Human aid workers caught in crossfire. Children crying for parents who might never come. That's when he first saw her. She moved through the chaos, like water flowing around stones, her hands glowing with a soft, pearl-like radiance as she touched the wounded. Where her fingers passed, bleeding slowed, pain eased, and hope flickered back into dying eyes. Her hair was the color of starlight, braided with small silver bells that chimed softly as she worked. When she looked up and caught his stare, her eyes were the deep purple of Kithura's twilight sky. "You're staring," she said, her voice carrying a musical accent that made his chest tighten. "Is there something wrong with how I work?" "No, Dex fumbled with his words as another explosion rocked the camp. "Your technique is ... unusual. I'm Dex, combat medic with the Human Relief Corps." "Zira," she replied simply, returning her attention to a wounded child. "I help where I can." A Kithuran fighter screamed as shrapnel worked its way deeper into his chest. Dex moved quickly, his hands finding the entry wound, applying pressure while reaching for his surgical kit. But Zira was already there, her palms hovering over the injury. The fighter's agonized cries faded to peaceful breathing. "How did you—" Dex began, but Zira's eyes held a warning. "Not here. Not now." They worked side by side through the night, their movements gradually synchronizing like dancers learning the same rhythm. When their hands accidentally touched while reaching for the same patient, Dex felt a jolt of something electric, something that had nothing to do with medicine, and everything to do with the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating as dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. The wounded had been stabilized, and the immediate crisis passed. Zira sat on a supply crate, exhaustion evident in the droop of her shoulders. Dex approached with 2 cups of the bitter local coffee. "You saved more lives tonight than most medics save in a month," he said, settling beside her. "Where did you train?" She accepted the coffee with hands that trembled slightly, the first sign of vulnerability he'd seen from her. "My grandmother taught me. Old ways, passed down through generations." Her smile was enigmatic. "Your people would call it alternative medicine." Another lie, he realized, but one she needed to tell. Whatever her secret was, it had kept dozens of people alive tonight. As she sipped her coffee, a strand of that starlight hair fell across her cheek, and Dex had to grip his cup tighter to keep from reaching out to brush it away. "Will you be here tomorrow?" he asked. "As long as there are wounded to tend," she replied, and when she smiled, he felt something shift in his chest, something warm and dangerous and completely inappropriate for a war zone. But as he watched her walk away, her silver bells chiming softly in the morning breeze, Dex knew he was already lost. Whispers in the dark. The underground shelter reeked of fear and antiseptic, carved from living rock to withstand the increasingly frequent bombardments. Dex had been on Cathara for 2 weeks now, and the attacks were getting worse. The separatist forces were pushing closer to the capital, their weapons growing more sophisticated, their targets more ruthless. "Incoming!" someone shouted as the earth shook above them. Dust rained from the ceiling as medical staff instinctively ducked but continued working. In the corner, a Kutheran mother crooned to her infant, her voice threading through the chaos. Like a lifeline, Zira appeared at his elbow with that uncanny ability she had to move silently despite her bells. "The northern tunnel collapsed," she whispered. 7 trapped, 3 critical. They moved together through the narrow passages, Dex's emergency pack bouncing against his hip. The rescue teams had managed to extract the victims, but barely. Young Kutheran male was pinged beneath rubble, his breathing shallow and labored. Internal bleeding, definitely. Dex began setting up for emergency surgery while Zira knelt beside the patient. "What's your name?" she asked softly, her hand finding his forehead. "Jorik," he gasped. "My wife, ... is she ... Safe, Zira assured him, though Dex hadn't seen any women brought out. Her touch seemed to ease his panic, and Dex watched in fascination as the man's vital signs stabilized. Not medically possible, but happening right in front of him. "I need you to keep him calm while I operate," Dex murmured, and Zira nodded. Her fingers traced patterns on Jorik's temples that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. The surgery took 3 hours. Jorik shouldn't have survived. The damage was too extensive, the blood loss too severe. But with Zira's strange touch keeping him stable, Dex managed the impossible. When they finally emerged from the surgical alcove, both exhausted and blood-spattered, Zira swayed on her feet. Dex caught her elbow, steadying her. "You okay? Just tired?" But her face was pale, almost translucent, and those silver bells barely chimed. "It takes ... fought." He guided her to a quiet corner where medical supplies were stored, away from the main flow of activity. "What you do, it's not normal, is it?" Zira's purple eyes met his, and for a moment he saw something ancient there, something that spoke of secrets and power older than the war above them. Normal is relative in times like these. "Zira," he moved closer, close enough to catch the scent of her, something like night-blooming flowers and ozone after lightning. "I've been a medic for 8 years. I've never seen anything like what you can do." She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "My people have gifts, some stronger than others. The war has made us careful about showing them, because they'd use you as weapons, or fear us enough to eliminate us entirely." Her hand brushed his cheek, and he felt that electric current again, stronger this time. "Why do you not fear me?" "Because," he said, covering her hand with his own, "I've watched you save lives. I've seen the way you cry when we lose someone. Fear doesn't fit with any of that." The space between them seemed to shrink. Her lips were parted slightly, her breathing shallow. Dex found himself memorizing the curve of her jaw, the way her hair caught what little light filtered down from above. When she stepped closer, he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Dex," she whispered, and his name sounded like music in her accent. "Yeah?" "The evacuation orders came through today. Captain Noor is posting them tonight." The words hit him like ice water. "How long?" 72 hours. All human personnel are to be extracted before the separatists reach the capital. He wanted to argue, to say they couldn't leave the wounded, couldn't abandon the people who needed them. But he knew the protocols. When a world became too dangerous for non-essential personnel, evacuation was mandatory. "Come with us," he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. apply for refugee status. There are programs, Dex. Her fingers pressed against his lips, silencing him. I cannot leave. Why not? But she was already pulling away, the moment broken. There are reasons, good reasons. As if summoned by their conversation, Captain Noor's voice echoed through the shelter. All human personnel report for briefing in 1 hour. Mandatory attendance. Zira stepped back, creating distance between them again. But before she could disappear into the crowd, Dex caught her hand. Whatever your reasons, he said, promise me we'll talk about this. Really talk. She looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face. Promise me something in return. Anything. Promise me that when the time comes, you won't try to change my mind. The weight of that request settled in his chest like a stone. Zira, promise me, Dex. He squeezed her hand, feeling the delicate bones beneath her warm skin. I promise to listen. That's all I can promise right now. She smiled then, sad hand. Beautiful, and lifted their joined hands to press a soft kiss to his knuckles. The gesture was so tender, so intimate, that his breath caught. That will have to be enough, she whispered, and melted back into the shadows, leaving him standing, alone with the taste of possibility and heartbreak on his tongue. Hearts beneath the stars, the triple moons of Kithara hung like jewels against the velvet sky, casting silver light across the ruins of what had once been a meditation garden. Dex had found this place by accident, a hidden courtyard behind the shelter's outer walls, where flowering vines still climbed broken pillars and a small fountain trickled with recycled water. You found my secret place. Zira's voice came from the shadows, tinged with amusement. He turned to see her emerging from behind a collapsed archway, her hair unbraided for once and flowing loose around her shoulders. Without the constant chiming of her bells, her movements were ghost quiet. I was looking for somewhere to think, he admitted. The evacuation briefing was ... intense. She joined him on the stone bench beside the fountain, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her body in the cool night air. 48 hours now. 47 hours and 32 minutes. But who's counting? He tried to keep his tone light, but the approaching deadline felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. Tell me about your world, she said suddenly. Your real home, not the military bases and field hospitals. Dex leaned back against the bench, surprised by the question. Earth? It's green, I guess, where I grew up anyway. My family has a small farm in what used to be called Iowa. Rolling hills, cornfields that stretch to the horizon. My sister still runs it. She says I'm too restless for farming. Do you miss it? Sometimes, the quiet, mostly. The way morning mist looks rising off the fields. He glanced at her profile, illuminated by moonlight. What about you? What was? Kithara like before the war? Her smile was wistful. Beautiful. The cities were built into living trees, massive things that took centuries to grow properly. Music was everywhere, because sound traveled so well through the branches. Children would play in the canopy while their parents worked below. Her voice caught slightly. My grandmother's house was in the oldest tree in our settlement. 500 years old, with rooms that glowed with bioluminescent moss. Is it gone? Burned in the first wave of attacks. Grandmother died trying to save the younglings trapped in the upper levels. Zira's hand found his in the darkness. She was like me. Could heal with touch, could sense emotions, could do other things. What other things? Instead of answering, she stood and moved to the fountain. Her hands hovered over the water, and gradually, impossibly, it began to glow. Soft pearl light rippled outward from where her fingers nearly touched the surface, creating patterns that danced and shifted like living art. My grandmother could make entire groves bloom out of season, she whispered. She could calm wild storms and speak to the planet itself. I'm not that strong, but I can do enough. Dex rose and moved behind her, close enough to feel her hair brush his chest. Enough for what? To protect the children who can't protect themselves. She turned in his arms, and suddenly they were face to face, her hands pressed against his chest. There's something else, Dex. Something I need to show you. She led him through a hidden passage that wound deeper into the underground complex, past areas he'd never seen before. The walls here were natural rock, carved with symbols that seemed to pulse with faint light. Finally, they emerged into a vast cavern where dozens of Kithrin children sat in meditation circles, their eyes closed, soft glows emanating from their small hands. They're all like you, he breathed, survivors of the purges. The separatists have been hunting us systematically. Anyone with abilities, anyone who might pose a threat to their technological advantages. Zira moved among the children, checking on them with the tenderness of a mother. Most of their families are dead. They have nowhere else to go. A small boy with silver hair opened his eyes and smiled up at Zira. Zirama, will you sing tonight? Of course, Kale. She knelt beside him, and the boy immediately curled into her embrace. This is my friend Dex. He's a healer too, like us. Kale studied Dex with eyes far too old for his face. He feels different, warm, but clouded. He doesn't have the gift, Zira explained gently. His healing comes from knowledge and tools, not from within. But he cares about you, Kale said with the brutal honesty of childhood. I can feel that clearly. Dex felt heat rise in his cheeks. But Zira's laugh was like silver bells. Yes, little one. He does. Later, after she'd sung the children to sleep with a lullaby, it seemed to make the very air shimmer. They walked back through the tunnels in comfortable silence. At the entrance to the hidden cavern, Dex stopped. Now I understand, he said, quietly, why you can't leave. 43 children, Dex, all of them dependent on me to keep the shielding strong enough to hide from the separatist scanners. If I leave, they die. He pulled her into his arms, needing to feel her solid and warm against him. God, Zira, there has to be another way. If there is, I haven't found it. Her voice was muffled against his shoulder. And we're running out of time. He tilted her chin up, studying her face in the dim light. Then we better not waste what time we have. When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. But when she responded, her arms winding around his neck, the kiss deepened into something desperate and hungry. She tasted like the night air, and something uniquely her. And when she made a soft sound against his lips, he felt his control begin to fray. Not here, she whispered against his mouth. My room. It's private. Her chamber was small but beautiful, carved from living rock and lined with soft fabrics in shades of purple and silver. Crystalline formations in the walls provided gentle light, and the air smelled of the night-blooming flowers she kept in small pots. Are you sure? He asked, his hands framing her face. I've been sure since the moment you didn't run when you saw what I could do. She began unfastening his shirt with fingers that trembled slightly. I've been sure since you looked at those children like they mattered more than military protocols. Their lovemaking was tender and desperate, by turns urgent kisses interspersed, with whispered confessions, gentle touches that mapped the geography of hope and sorrow. When she arched beneath him, her skin glowing faintly with the power that lived within her, Dex felt as though he was touching something sacred. Afterward, she lay curled against his chest, her hair spread across his shoulder like spun starlight. Her breathing was deep and even, but he knew she wasn't sleeping. What are you thinking? He asked softly. That I want to remember this exactly as it is, she replied. The way the light looks on your skin, the sound of your heartbeat, the way You smell like soap and safety. Dex tightened his arms around her, knowing that tomorrow would bring them closer to an impossible choice. But for now, under the gentle glow of crystal light, with the woman he was falling in love with warm and pliant in his arms, he let himself believe that somehow they'd find a way through this, even though he was beginning to suspect they wouldn't. The choice unveiled the morning, brought chaos and the sharp smell of smoke drifting down through the ventilation shafts. Dex woke to find Zira already gone, only the warmth of her pillow and the faint scent of night flowers proving she'd been there at all. He dressed quickly and made his way to the main shelter, where Captain Noor was barking orders into his comm unit. Negative, Command. We cannot extend the deadline. Separatist forces are 12 hours out, maybe less. The extraction point will be compromised if we wait any longer. 12 hours. Dex felt his chest tighten as the reality hit him. In 12 hours, he would either be on a transport heading for the orbital station, or he would be staying behind to face whatever came next. And if he stayed without authorization, it would be the end of his career, possibly the end of his life. Medic. Chun, Noor called out, using his formal designation. You're on the priority manifest. Transport leaves at 1800 hours. Yes, sir. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. He found Zira in the children's cavern, but she wasn't alone. An elderly Kitharan male sat cross-legged in the center of the meditation circle, his skin bearing the deep silver blue of advanced age and his eyes clouded with cataracts. Despite his apparent blindness, he seemed to look directly at Dex when he entered. So, the old man said, his voice carrying the weight of years and authority, you are the human who has claimed the heart of our last. Mindweaver. Elder Vex, Zira said quietly. This is Dex, the healer I told you about. Mindweaver? Dex looked between them, sensing undercurrents he didn't understand. Elder. Vex rose with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to moving in darkness. Zira. Child, you have not told him everything. There wasn't time. There is no more time. The elder's clouded eyes seemed to pierce straight through Dex. Human healer, what do you know of our gifts? I know Zira can heal with her touch. That she can calm people, maybe influence their emotions. Dex glanced at her, seeing tension in the set of her shoulders. I know she's been hiding the extent of her abilities. The gift she carries is not merely healing, though that is part of it. Elder Vex moved to the cavern wall, where ancient symbols were carved deep into the rock. She is Mindweaver One, who can touch the thoughts and souls of others, who can bend reality itself to her will. In the old times, Mindweavers were the guardians of our people, the living bridges between the physical and spiritual realms. There were hundreds of us once, Zira added softly. Now there are 3 left alive on all of Kithara. Elder Vex, myself, and a young girl in the Northern Territories who may not have survived the latest attacks. Dex felt the pieces clicking into place. That's why the Separatists are hunting you. Not just because you can heal, because you're powerful enough to stop them. More than that, Elder Vex said grimly. The capital city sits atop the Heartstone, a crystalline formation that amplifies psychic abilities across the entire continent. For generations, Mindweavers have used it to maintain the barriers that protect our settlements from the storms that rage in the outer regions. The barriers are failing, Zira continued. Without enough Mindweavers to maintain them, whole cities have been lost to the storm winds. The Separatists know that if they can eliminate the remaining Mindweavers, the storms will finish what their weapons started. But you could rebuild somewhere else, Dex said desperately. Take the children, find a new world. The children cannot survive without the barriers, and the barriers cannot exist without the Heartstone. Elder Vex's voice was patient but implacable. This is not about politics or territory, human. This is about the survival of our species. Around them, the children continued their meditation, their small faces serene despite the weight of the conversation. Kale opened his eyes and looked directly at Dex. "Zirama has to stay," the boy said simply. "If she leaves, the light goes." "Out? What light?" Dex knelt beside the boy, though he dreaded the answer. "The one that keeps the shadows away. The one that makes the safe places." Kale's small hand found Dex's, and suddenly Dex could feel it, a vast network of energy that flowed beneath the surface of the world, with Zira as a crucial node in its pattern. She's part of the song now. If she stops singing, we all stop. Singing. Dex rose slowly, understanding settling over him like a weight. The evacuation. You're not just choosing to stay. You can't leave. I could, Zira said quietly. But within hours of my absence, the barriers would collapse. The storm winds would tear through what's left of the settlements. Millions would die. So this is it. This is goodbye. The words came out harsher than he intended, but the pain was too raw to contain. "Dex," she started toward him, but he backed away. "No, don't. Don't make this harder than it already is." He ran his hands through his hair, fighting the urge. 2-0 put his fist through the stone wall. "God, Zira, when were you going to tell me? When the transport was lifting off? I thought maybe I could find another way. That maybe Elder Vex or the Northern Mindweaver could maintain the barriers long enough for me to what? Come back and play house while your people slowly die?" He immediately regretted the words, seeing the way they hit her like physical blows. "Dex," Elder Vex said quietly, "your pain is understandable, but do not let it make you cruel. She carries a burden that would break lesser souls." The old man was right, and Dex knew it. But knowing didn't make the agony in his chest any easier to bear. "I'm sorry," he said to Zira. "I'm sorry. I can't lose you. Not like this." She crossed to him then, her hands finding his face, her thumbs brushing away tears he didn't realize he was shedding. "You're not losing me. Not really. Part of me will always be with you, no matter how far you travel. That's not enough. It has to be." She kissed him then, soft and desperate, and he could taste salt her tears or his. He couldn't tell. "It has to be enough, because it's all we have." Above them, the sound of explosions was getting closer. The 12-hour countdown had become something much shorter, and time was running out like sand through desperate fingers. "The transport," he whispered against her lips. "I know. I have to go. I know." But neither of them moved, holding each other in the crystalline light while the world prepared to end around them.